So what you'll need for this recipe is some alum, and that helps preserve crunchiness in it. I usually put in a little bit of Mrs. Dash just for a generic blend of spices. You need some whole peppercorns. You'll need some bay leaves, some dried chilies, some mustard seeds, a ton of garlic. Now these have been popped from the head and peeled, so these are all processed and clean and ready to go. You'll need a bunch of sprigs of fresh dill. You will need some distilled white vinegar, a little bit of canning and pickling salt, some measuring spoons, and then a bunch of widemouth jars with the fresh tops. On top of that, I like to add some carrots into it. I got a bunch of carrot sticks from last night, and then as well as probably about 30 pounds of pickles cut into spears. So one of the first things you want to do is boil your jars so they are sanitized and clean, as well as scrub all your pickles, and any pickles that have any soft spots you want to discard. So in order to get spear sizes that will fit the jars, we want to cut our pickling cucumbers down the middle, and the thicker slices, you can even break these into threes, whatever size you prefer. As long as they're somewhat regular, that should work well for these. And we're going to continue this until we have all of our pickles into spears to fill the jars. So first thing that I usually put into the jars are about 2 sprigs of dill, and those will go into every single jar. Next, you're going to add 1 dried chili into each of the jars. And this is nice for a little bit of heat, and it's not a lingering heat, but it's a nice little upfront heat. So we'll add 1 dried chili to each one of the jars. Next, you're going to add 2 large cloves into each jar. And just like with any of these ingredients, if you like them spicy, you can add more of the dried chilies. If you like it garlickier, you can add a little bit more garlic. I usually do 2 large cloves per jar, or 3 of the smaller cloves per jar. If you like extra dill, then add some extra dill. So my recipe just calls for 2 large cloves, so if you want to follow along, then 2 large cloves it is. Next, you're going to add about 5 black peppercorns per jar, maybe a little bit more. A pinch of black peppercorns should work. Maybe if you have a pile in your palm and you grab them with 2 fingers in your thumb, that's 5 to 8 black peppercorns. That should work just well, but at least 5 black peppercorns per jar. Next, for a little bit of extra flavor, I'm just going to do 1 shake of the Mrs. Dash Original into each jar. Next, you're going to do 1/2 teaspoon of mustard seeds per jar, and this gives it a nice little sharp and earthy flavor. Next, you're going to put 2 medium size or 1 large bay leaf into each jar. Next, add 1 tablespoon of pickling or canning salt into each jar. So now that all our jars are prepped, we're going to start stuffing the pickles into our jars. And the goal for this is to get as many of the spears into there as possible. So you'll shove spears into the jars until you physically can't anymore, which you'd be surprised on how many you can get in here when you think that you've used them all. And one of the reasons why I keep carrot slices as well is I want to take advantage of all the space in the jar. And once that you've completed all that, then these are a little bit harder. You can shove the carrots in there. Initially, I had added some carrots in for color, but it turns out that they taste really good in the brine. So take advantage of every little bit of space in your jar. And it's okay to put some force into it just to make sure that you're getting as much as you can out of the space in the jar. All right, so as you can see, we're just about full on that. And then what we'll do next is we'll add our brine and leave a little bit, about a ½ inch of headspace on there, and they should be ready to go for the bath. So we're gonna shove all the spears into here and get ready to can. After all the jars are filled with your carrots and your cucumber spears, we are going to make the brine, or a 1-to-1 ratio of distilled white vinegar to water. So if we put 6 cups of water, we're going to do 6 cups of the white vinegar. Once the brine is made and heated up to a boiling temperature, we'll pour the brine in jars. We will fill it up and we'll leave just about a ½ inch of headspace there. And we'll do that for each of these. Once the jars are filled with the brine, take a cloth and run that along the rim here to dislodge any debris so that you make sure you have a great seal when the time comes for the water bath. Just gonna wipe all these rings down. And then the next step is to boil the lids and the rings to soften up the rubber gasket on the lids and rings, but also to sanitize them. So we're gonna put our boiled lid on. We're gonna take our ring and we're just gonna turn it hand tight. And then this is ready to go in the water bath. Then the jars will sit in the water bath boiling for about 10 minutes until the gasket seals, and then you'll take them out and we'll put them on a towel.